Session on the Mesa design. So for you that may be watching on video, we're going to be up and about, walking around, so hopefully you can kind of track what's going on. I don't know if you can or not. Hope you can, but we appreciate the Mesa showing up and being here with us. I need to let everybody know I have a funeral to attend, so I'm going to leave no later than 6. I may have to walk out a little early, so I'm going to try to open the Mayor Pro Tem when that happens. So let me call the roll. Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lindemood. Here. Councilmember Wheat.
Here.
The mayor is here. Councilmember Dotson. Here. Councilmember Kelly. Here. Councilmember Wrigley.
Here.
Great. So we're all here, so I'm going to turn it over to Adrian immediately.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. We're excited to be here and have this discussion and bring back all of the different designs. You guys have seen some kind of progress images along the way, but we're of course familiar with the fact that you all sent in some different inspiration images. Mesa has taken all of that to heart and produced a plethora of different design options. So the strategy tonight is not to sit through a formal PowerPoint presentation. The strategy is to, I'm calling it Vanna White. So our Mesa team will go around all of the different boards, and I think we're going to start on this side.
Yes.
Of course, you're familiar with Stan, Jason, David, our Mesa team. And they will give you kind of a 30-second rundown of what the high points and differences are of each of those boards around this direction. And then they will give each of you all 2 sets of colored dots. And they'll elaborate that in a little bit more detail, but essentially one, and y'all correct me if we're off base, but one is going to be to indicate what your preferred hardscape or kind of that base design shape is. And then the other is going to be more indicative of your preferred landscape and plant material and ground covering and those types of things. A lot of these elements are interchangeable. Once you pick that base design, you can say, well, I'd prefer to have grass around it, or I'd prefer to have gravel or stone or whatever. Those things can be interchangeable, and we'll talk about that in more detail. But I know everybody wants to jump in, and we want to give the mayor a chance to participate in the dot exercise, so I'm going to hand it right off so that we can get into our Vanna White parade here.
Great, thank you, Adrian. Appreciate it, Mayor and Council. It's been a wonderful journey here. We're very excited about this project, and the process has been good. We have started, as you know, months back, maybe a year ago. And so, as you know, I just want to ground it that we start out with the 3-mile corridor, which you kind of see here in its fullest, from the north end towards McCain to the southern end of the Creekway and downtown. So from that standpoint, we always had the idea of the ribbon concept, or the kind of braided rope you might describe, whether it be hardscape and landscape, kind of working that way. Design criteria, we've kind of garnered that from you over the past, and these elements are distinguishes Colleyville from adjoining communities. Complements Colleyville's identity, consistent design expression, unified cohesive experience, and exceptional quality. So those have been kind of the monikers that we're carrying through the process of this that we want to achieve for you, that you've set out for us at that same time. So again, that's what we're here. We think we have some great options that you can really choose from, and as Adrian said, we can mix and match. So you can imagine in a parallel kind of way, hardscape, the way the hardscape has its way it can play, and then landscape, same way. So we got a lot of ways to play this. So don't think that one scheme is really the way it can play out. We can take things that we like from others. What I'm showing here in the horticulture, I'm going to very quickly, the horticulture, we show kind of a blue and red scheme. In planting design, you really want to keep a kind of a cohesive kind of character with planting, that being color. And color can get a little out of hand if you put wrong colors with other things, believe it or not, in landscape. It can get a little hodgepodge. So we have kind of put together one scheme, and these are all very Texas natives and adaptive species. You're seeing different heights from a 30-inch height, which we can't exceed that 30-inch height on the roadway and the actual median, down to a level. So we have different levels in how these interplay. They go down to 12 inches and ultimately into accent plantings. And then over here in the far right are the kind of corridor right-of-ways that could be the ornamental trees that also complement in that same family of the corridor, because we are talking corridor. And so we need to weave that whole carpet, you might say, together down through there. We also have accent plantings that we'll call out, and they're pretty important to have some accents and punctuations within that corridor. So anyway, that's the play on horticulture. It will be more thought through as we continue that and get your likes and dislikes. First scheme, ribbon concept. It's the contiguous movement of this wall that moves through the corridor. This corridor has segmentation Don't think that that's the size of stone, but this is out the quarry where this could be harvested. They can come in these heights and so forth, but this is in the scale of what we'd be using coming out of that quarry bed in this scheme. Again, it's a weave. You still got your canopy trees still in that play, and then the combination of landscape. So it's really this braided kind of character that we're trying to create with hardscape and softscape. Be it known, when the landscape goes into dormancy, you will get some deciduous qualities. So the hardscape or the vertical kind of side of it starts to show up and expresses itself, which is a good thing. So you're going to have that change through seasons. Some things will go away, come to life as they do in the spring and summer, and that's the exciting thing about this, of having that kind of play.
What's the approximate height of that? Couple, 2 feet?
It's about 20 feet, 24 inches
Okay. So,
in this scheme.
Okay.
And as you can see, we've also got slabs of stone too that set down into it, and material can grow between that and so forth. Create more of a naturalistic kind of ruggedness to that. Next scheme is the ribbon concept called broken, where the actual ribbon itself breaks every now and then along the way. And it may be in lengths and so forth, but the ribbon is still there, and we're still pulling it through. So it's just different that there's some missing parts, and the landscape kind of goes through it. Again, very similar to the one I just spoke to.
Is there cement between those rocks? Are those, that one looks to be, but that one does not.
This is showing gravel.
No, I'm talking about between the big rocks.
Oh, the big rocks in here?
No.
No, the
up
big
top,
ro-
the big.
These here?
Yeah, is there
No,
cement in
no,
between
no,
them?
it's just gravel
Okay.
in there, and it's interesting to let landscape kind of go move through it, but it will be.
So they're not cemented together?
They're not cemented together.
Because that
Actually,
looks to be, to me.
yeah, it isn't. It actually is set in on a road-based material, so we're not even having, the size of this material is large enough that structurally it will hold its own right there. So we're saving a lot of cost from that standpoint. I'm not putting in a lot of expensive footings. Lighting can be incorporated in these too, and you can get very exciting kind of play with lighting in this. So again, there's drama that we can play through the evening and so forth and how that plays.
Oh, yeah, it's important.
So I don't mean to step in front of everybody here, but next scheme is the ribbon concept undulating. Now, this looks a little more deserty, but don't think that we can't add that to it. The nice thing about this is it moves in a vertical
And horizontal.
and a horizontal both, so you're getting a real dynamic play.
It looks lower. Is it lower, or is it just perspective?
Yes, this is lower
Okay.
here.
Yeah,
This
it
is
goes
24.
high to low.
That's the same as, the high height
Yes,
is the
same
same as those?
height.
Okay.
It
But then
goes
just
down
goes
to
lower.
about a
Okay.
6-8 inch height, so you're getting that vertical kind of play. It's an interesting thing as you move down, so you got that sine curve that's going down through this. Again, that creates an interesting kind of quality to that. Again, like I said, the landscape can be much more vibrant and lush and so forth, so don't think, this is just showing an idea of how we can minimize landscape and in that idea. The next concept is the ribbon concept with planter. Same ribbon wall, but now we're introducing the planter. So that allows that to lift up, extend 24 inches, material in it, material can jump down, so you got a little play there with landscape. Moving forward on that is the planter concept on the next one. Again, it's much more of a ribbon woven, and it also has a grade change of undulation going on with the planter wall.
Yeah, I like that, oh, shouldn't say I like, but.
You'll get the chance yet.
I know. The angle, this has an angle rather than a curve.
Correct.
Yeah, this is main difference.
This one here, as you can see in the plan, there's this kind of, again, braided look. It's a broken wall with planter integrated. So you can see that these have planters and the landscape working in with it. All these can have turf, gravel, any combination.
Question, those last two that are the same shape, one has, it's both 450 feet both, but one has more, why is that different between those two? Is there a
As far
reason?
as the actual length of that?
Yeah, the length of the.
This is actually
sign.
a different location on the actual median that we're choosing on this side.
Not
This
the same,
location.
yeah.
It's a different location.
Well, but they're both 450 feet.
The note at the bottom.
Oh,
The one just longer, I mean, the features are larger horizontally.
Three.
Yeah,
Here
I think that might be a
Curious if there was a
misrepresentation
reason or
here.
if that was just a.
Yeah, I think that may be a misrepresentation.
Oh, okay.
Sorry on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the 450.
Okay, well, that was important to me because I like those two, but I didn't know if that, so you're telling me the dimensions are the same, but just a different material.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it would be planners can be elongated.
Okay.
So that can make up the difference with that. All right, so, next one is the planter concept, just natural. This is just a planter sitting individually, where we can do this. We'll go into that in more detail, but these are just isolated planting, gravel, and/or hardscape or turf. But these planters are sitting out there ultimately kind of floating on their own. That is in a kind of more quarried field. Again, this is a veneered cut stone. That's quarry block. So these are much more refined and veneered. Same here. This planter, veneered. Different from the other, which is block. Much more coarse and rugged. This is more refined, but it's an isolated.
So it's concrete veneer?
No, it's a stone veneer. It has a concrete footing, and it will have a CMU block that it will work up against.
Oh, okay. But I mean, it's stuck on,
Yes,
okay.
it's adhered on it with mortar. Here we're moving into the next one, which is the ground plane naturalized. This is where there's no wall, no planter. It's all horizontal on the ground. A little pillow to the berm, or to the island, like hardscape, gravel, and/or concrete, and then planting.
So no rocks that rise up on that one?
No rock
Okay.
coming up.
Does it make it easier for cars to come up and go over it? I
Well,
would
sure,
assume.
yeah, these would act somewhat like a decorative Jersey barrier, I'd
Yeah.
say. So, but you're not gonna get some of the verticality, and then the change of this in the seasons that goes down, it's gonna be a little bit more open, and a little bit empty.
Are all these ground plane ones you're getting into, are they for specific medians or are they just a completely different idea?
Different idea.
It's
Different
okay,
idea,
okay, I'm just
yes.
making sure I'm
Yes,
following.
good point. Again, this is with seeded concrete, with stone seeded into the concrete. Again, same ribbon, geometric and so forth, using the large slabs of stone flush to it. That's the quarry stone. Here again, we're using concrete patterned, can be seeded, different color, with gravel, and that being landscape woven in there. Moving on, this was showing all two gravel colors. Again, landscape in these kind of median plays. And then lastly, this is what we call basic, which is just turf, trees, and that's it. So, any questions?
I'm sure we have lots, but.
Any questions?
The difference between these two is one's refined and one's not, more
Let me-
natural.
I wanted to bring one thing to your attention very quickly, and I wanted to talk about what you're seeing in front of you here is showing where you can do planters and ribbon wall and planting. And David, I'd like you to go through it.
Yeah,
very
just
quickly.
real briefly, this is more of a reference to understand the corridor, but as you can see on the bottom where you have the blue, it's the same corridor, it's just two different versions of it in terms of how we're representing it. The blue is indicating where we do not have a visibility restriction in terms of height. So you can see the opportunity along the entire corridor, those are the areas where that can happen. When you look at the red, the darker red is that same it's just reciprocated in red, but what we're showing in the lighter red, this is intended to show the amount of corridor that is actually wider than the 6 foot, which is going to be in the 16-foot wide back of curb to back of curb. So just in perspective, what we're seeing with these options are showing the wider median, and whatever option or collective group of options we decide on would then be applied to the areas that you see that are not colored in here, which are narrower.
When you see medians that are blank, it means we can't have anything more than 24 inches high. So we can't, you're showing where we can actually put the actual.
What do I do with the dots? I'm getting ready to walk.
All
out
right,
the
let's
door.
go.
Yeah, so this is,
Here's how we're doing it. What color do you have?
yeah, so we've got
Red and yellow, right?
red or yellow.
The yellow is hardscape.
Okay.
And hardscape would be whatever you like from how you generally like it, from whether it's planter, ribbon wall. You can talk and add comments on the board, or individual planter. So it's a hardscape vote.
Okay.
You're voting on hardscape.
Yeah, hardscape character.
Green is
yellow.
landscape. And so whatever one you kind of like is the landscape.
Would you like more than one?
You can, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to write those things
Yeah.
why you might like.
Okay, so don't tear them in half or anything.
That's one of the rules. You cannot tear them in half.
Shouldn't have asked.
And Richard showed one of each, so
That
that's
way
good.
you get slapped from that.
But I
Go
think-
ahead and,
So the only difference between these two that they're standing in front of is the
right.
one's
They don't
more of
tell you
the
how you-
natural,
yes,
the other one's more,
is a cut, is a
clean
veneer.
cut.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
more cut stone.
but the design is exactly the same.
It's virtually close, except this one, the planter actually dies down,
So
the
many
lays down, the other one doesn't.
There would be no way to tell the difference along, you know, we just, this is part of getting one of the.
You guys, I mean, this is so You've done a great job.
We're trying to accommodate.
I know.
This criteria means a lot, and it's what you guys have communicated. Makes a lot of sense, but again, they could be adapted either way. The one on the left could be seen similar to Stone Creek.
Fair, I got you.
Of Stone Creek, or vice versa. It's just.
Like the First Amendment, maybe, you know, mention.
I did go out. Thank you, George. Which one do you like?
So, yeah, so it's kind of that idea, but it's.
Those over there?
We don't notice that before.
I don't like the sharp turn, sharp corner.
I like the edges.
It's a lot of interesting things going on.
It's better, but I agree with you, it's still similar.
Okay, so I think once we have cleared ones that nobody's interested in, we're gonna turn those boards around and hone in the conversation.
Okay, cool.
The more you have of this,
Oh, those flat ones at all.
Are you guys going?
Those flat ones, I don't like those at all.
so your road cross section, you've got 3 lanes each way.
Did you put, where's your dog?
How much? And then the other one.
This looks like what they've done, little things in
Hold out, be the tiebreaker.
Hello. Watching you with this chair for you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I just want you to.
Hi, nice to see you.
No, we are what they call the blue palette, the red palette. Depending upon how their themes go, you can see the blue themes or the red themes introduced in the different concepts.
Good to see you. Thank you. That makes family.
See how they're trying to tie the color scheme together? You can see like in that run, that one kind of goes to the red scheme, and then the one on the end there goes to the blue scheme. So they're trying to tie in one of 2 different color schemes, which is kind of a conceptual way to introduce it.
Yes. The mayor.
There would be small areas with, most of these are going to be irrigated. These are. Good example. Really designed to be low maintenance, because of the high standard, we're
It's
going
only one plant.
to have to be dealing with die off, pruning.
I think you're going to see those.
But they're designed to be.
I'm like, but they're blue.
They're a blue, yeah, they're a blue. Yeah, okay, I see. They're like made up till I came in. They're so big.
Like that one?
Oh, that goes right here.
With the big block.
I like the colors.
Big block, I know you have approved it
Sweetheart.
I haven't done my.
I miss that.
Oh, it goes
Is the green supposed to really just be on a color?
Green is.
No, it's supposed to be on saying, I like the grass ground plain, or I like the gravel
Colleyville
ground
down,
plain.
weeds growing up here. Weeds growing up.
But,
You know, Nancy growing up here, right here. Right here.
any of these could be.
I don't know, I thought that's what we're going to.
No, it's just any of the general look. I like.
It's like the ivy ground cover. It's like a creeper. Sure you have enough like that. Yeah. Still gonna be green. When you're going back.
Away from that,
And you want, interchanging all these elements is so much easier.
they all seem to be. Adrian? So you're probably gonna start peeling away and going to the focal points.
I already said that. Well, they haven't voted yet. No, I'm not gonna push them, they're debating.
Yeah, and that's the safety.
Once they've all voted, we'll.
Seeing a clear consensus over here.
Okay, Chuck, you voted?
Yes.
Bobby voted, I think?
Bobby voted,
Chuck, did, George vote?
George voted,
Okay, where'd Callie go?
Ellie's right beside you.
They're different, and they're different. And pretty.
shrubbery.
Where are you going north and south?
I'm going, and I turn
Out of your
left.
neighborhood.
Kelly, you can
Just
see
here.
it
I
a
don't know.
little bit better on the.
I'm going north.
It'll be green, I think it's upper.
Some of them over there.
Not because I don't like, but because I'm so particular about it. It's more like, I like this element, but not that one, but I know that's a conversation.
Well, and we're gonna white.
There's 3 lanes. Can't see, but there's 2.
Does it need to be
So
restriped?
drivers think, and I've seen this several times now, and I almost did it myself the other night. It's very dark, and there are 3 lanes, and you think, okay, that's nice. And the other, and you think, I like this, what if this way, so you come, drive the rightmost
There's a lot going on, okay.
Yeah, they have the black
Well, I was specifically looking at the ground cover, I guess.
I'm just gonna do that, that's really, that's how I feel.
But you're saying.
You vote already?
No, I'm sorry.
How'd you do that?
I just want to blue, I don't have a particular one that. Yeah.
Your design.
That's what I just did.
So they'll spend other features if they have type cost or vice versa. Right. Makes sense.
All right, I think Tammy's last one.
Do you want to start pulling these? Because these are not going anywhere then. These are the ones that are.
So they all seem like they would like the same thing.
Well, wait a minute, just a second. I got a question.
Thanks for giving me one.
If, when we talk about those, we may decide that we want X, Y, Z.
But what I may do is place them lower,
Oh, that's fine.
and that way you can see them, but they're not part of the discussion. So let's do that.
I don't need any grass.
Oh, yeah, we need grass is gonna be, maybe some ground cover.
Chocolate marker.
But he said once we narrow down the landscape.
and you have to clear out
If you have
all.
grass, you have to cut it.
You have to
Yeah, but when you
clean
cut
the
it,
grass.
you also cut all the little stuff that lands on the grass.
No, she still got her.
I don't like this at all.
You don't stress me out.
Don't you ask me if you decided?
That's, I'm sewing that with, oh my.
You're over here trying to influence my vote.
They shouldn't try to influence.
I haven't said a word to her about her,
Correct
but
one is.
I think I would like to use rock.
No, I like this color, I chose this from.
No,
but I
but
don't
I
know if
like
I
it.
necessarily want the
You know,
grass,
something
because over
that's
there
more of a
grass.
blue version of
First,
this.
like, it's tall.
Before those two
Some
more
photograph.
that goes up and down.
Yeah, because over there, it's like North Texas really has it.
So,
I like that.
but that's the one.
I like the ones you
Roses are getting,
the rose.
Oh, this is just a reference.
Okay,
That's
wait.
the-
she's supposed to know the color.
It's got those.
Because I thought you said once.
And I love the gold.
Sorry, did I put one down too fast?
Yeah, basically, this is a reference.
I was picking a color.
Pick the one that you like, and then
Last time I didn't like any of them, this time I like
why
all
you
of
like
them.
Hey, you know?
I just put my rock on right there.
On the color over there, what's color?
Yeah, she chose to do it on the color palette.
So if you know you like the color, you can
So that way we don't have to walk around, if you already pick a hard, you can hard.
It's a unique project.
Are you, okay, that's fine.
I like it with more grass, but it doesn't need to be the grass. The grass over there is more of a.
I actually kind of like this.
Alright, so she already picked her heart. Huh? Yeah, like was the green.
Actually kind of like this.
Okay, Tammy.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're good?
When you're going, we're super happy.
You're good.
4 or 5 minutes. That one also. I think that's not sticky stone. No, you don't want to do sticky stone.
Oh, yeah, well, that's
Things that I.
every single
But I think.
that's one of the most defining aspects of
My
it.
only thing.
That's gonna be
This was a
consistent
great
every
quick
single.
Oh,
process of elimination.
Well, I think my only thing is over here
Oh, on the big
This
board.
looks like something.
And that's the problem, you can't put gravel will be thrown all over it.
Lantana's awesome.
Like the look.
And we can ask, but there's a yellow lantana and a white lantana.
Yeah, no, I think this is probably right.
And that's where mine would be.
As far as,
I think that's where our plan is.
but I did, I like the Beijing. I know how important air and I know it was good. Yeah, they saw them when they had the lights on when I was there. I haven't saw them.
Okay, so you want to.
Yeah.
I've been over.
No, they're all, they all did,
I
they did
think
a good
I
job.
like the black eyed stations. I don't think black eyed stations.
Let's agree on the big picture and then dial in on details.
Diving.
Let's bring the ones that are here.
No, let's go.
That's a really nice facility.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, you know what, there was one on the, can I ask a question? Who had their, green dot on here?
What?
You did? Okay, what was it about this, because I wanna make sure.
Put them up with these ones right here.
On this that you were
Put them on these easy.
taking out.
I like
Dot on it. Which one's got dot on it?
Why don't you put a dot on that? Well, it's for this,
Oh, the colors, yeah, the colors. That's
pink stone.
Okay,
They
so were you saying you like the parts?
Any more questions?
are, no. Oh, I'm sorry, no.
I deserve that answer for that question, that's all I can say. I deserve that answer.
You like that one?
Dot on there. Bobby said it's a color
We're
scheme.
gonna need
I
your
said
input on
that's
the
right.
gear feed.
Right.
Right.
Well, they did a good job.
Too, and I like.
Do we have another one that goes up there?
Okay,
Yeah, there's
we'll
one
talk
more,
about
this
that.
one's coming
Okay.
up.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, okay. Alright,
You're the only one, you're standing out.
Do it my way.
It's a principality.
alright, we're bringing one more up here.
Nice. Well done.
Oh, you know what, we'll just lay it on this one, no big deal.
Yeah, you just take the.
Oh, she's got it.
There you go. There you go. I was about to tear something out. There you go.
Okay,
Kathy, did you,
everybody,
the color scheme, did you have a preference on which,
I was like, that would be awesome.
which was, Kathy, which was your choice for the hardscape? Was it the far left?
My hardscape?
No,
No.
Kathy.
No, no.
Okay, this was yours?
Smooth stone.
Yes.
This was yours? Because you already picked up that color scheme, if you put your green one on this.
Oh, no. Mine, I'm sorry. Mine is the yellow.
Okay, so you were just saying you like this one, but you like the
Rough.
blue color
No,
scheme.
I'm sorry. That's my green dot on the blue color.
Now, where's your
No,
yellow
no,
dot?
but I'm saying that where's
My
your
yellow
yellow?
dot's in front of Adrian.
Right, so you like this one, but with the blue color scheme.
Yeah, but I don't like all the plants in that blue color scheme. That's why I didn't.
Okay. No, you get it, I get
Because
it.
I'm being very particular.
Yeah, I'm just saying if you took this, the blue concept of just blue color.
yeah, so let's kind of huddle back around and talk about the shape, and then we'll dive into the details. Okay, so this was a great process of elimination. I think a super effective, quick exercise to dial in. Based on, let's talk about everybody's yellow dots first. So I think it's really interesting that out of all of the different design hardscape options, everybody's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ended up on one of these two ribbon concepts, whether it's the one that's a little bit more natural cut or the one that's a little bit more refined in stone. So, you know, kind of based on the dot exercise, it looks like we're kind of going more in this direction. The two that had the dots on that hardscape, is there any, you know, extreme pain with going more in this hardscape direction?
I did that one, that one right there, just, it was just because it was a little bit of cleaner stone, but also like the gravel that was over there, I liked how it's a solid right there, and we could use the
You're talking
one
about
that's,
this piece right here?
yeah, the hard
Okay.
gravel though, I don't want it to be loose around.
Okay, so let's come back and if that's an
And
element
I'll
you
go
liked
with this
about it.
one. I have no problem. I even like how it comes from 0 up into the air.
Like
That
this
looks
appears
really
to be
good.
paint variation.
I like it because it's cleaner over there. It's higher and cleaner. And I like cleaner. I'm a cleaner kind of girl.
Gotcha.
You can see your fingernails.
Okay, so, so first and foremost, we've established kind of shape of the planter for the general median design. So I think the second element, unless there's other feedback that Mesa would like to receive, I think the next layer of elements is kind of what's on the ground around that planter. We saw a bunch of different options. This has some creeping juniper and blue stem and winter creeper, which which is more, I guess, ground cover type material. There were a couple of others that had actually more of a true grass type ground cover mixed with hardscape. This piece was what? This was gravel. I think that was gravel. I heard a number of you, where's that?
It's on the far, are you talking about
We
the one
like
where the
this.
base is?
Yeah, I heard a lot of you liked the ground plane
Yeah, I definitely
hardscape on this board.
That one and one of these other similar.
Yeah, so it sounded like from your conversation that a lot of people that weren't comfortable with the gravel, but appreciated the fact that we might need something other than just grass on the ground level, liked this, which was indicative of this inspiration image that was sent
Right.
in,
Yeah.
where it gives you the hardscape, but it's not that messy or loose look.
It's not that color.
It's a little bit cleaner.
So are those bigger stones like in the picture? Are they
So-
smaller?
So this is flat, how would you describe that? Not cemented in, but it's.
Yeah, it's seeded
Seeded
concrete
in.
with a aggregate.
So almost
I
not a
just-
completely smooth surface.
I would say one thing, just from our experiences, beware, you've got 3 lanes each side of hardscape. And the more you keep adding hardscape, you're taking away from really what you're trying to achieve as a more horticulture friendlier and get rid of heat island. So just think about that, how much there is. Now, we can do
Right.
some, but I would keep it, try to minimize it, not let
There's a lot
it
of
But
get
not do a lot of it.
the
that
strong
maybe.
element to that.
Yeah, so I guess that next piece or decision then
Well, we
is.
were
These like
saying,
small pieces of like
if
pebbles,
we-
or they more
if
like
we
big
use
rock?
They'll be different.
just that small area.
Just a
And
smaller
make
area.
that hard, no, no, the gravel.
Concrete.
Yeah,
So
I'm just
that's
not a
what
fan of the
council-
gravel.
Instead of the gravel,
Because all I do
we,
is see the gravel.
we
Change
set
that
it
out.
in concrete, yeah.
Do a ribbon of
Like I
concrete
can't,
here,
and then when they
but
cut
seeded.
cut grass.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
use,
Flying
instead
everywhere.
of gravel there, use a hard seed.
Yes.
okay.
Like
So-
Which makes a nice maintenance edge too, to be
Right.
able to
Yes.
work
Okay,
on.
so
I like
replacing this thin area of gravel
what?
with the seeded concrete
Yeah.
piece.
And he was mentioning we can look at samples to really choose
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
But I
This is
agree with
just
that
kind of
direction.
honing on the
I'm
conceptual.
on board.
I like that little trim edge that
Okay.
gives it,
So
some
balance of a little bit of
separation.
hardscape,
Yeah.
that, okay,
And it
now,
won't be loose
for the
gravel
green
or-
areas that are along this, how are we feeling about grass versus ground cover, you know, some of these more
I
ground
really
cover?
like those ground covers because they're evergreen,
Okay.
and I think the maintenance is pretty low on them too.
I like the ground covers,
It's a
yeah,
lot less than turf, believe it or not.
absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
Ground cover,
Has
yeah, that's fine.
herbicides, all kinds of things, and edging.
Yeah, and I like that blue,
On a
the
weekly
creeping
basis.
juniper grows really beautifully.
Which one pointed out?
This is the
It's the
creeping
front
juniper.
creeping juniper, it's
Yep.
just got a nice
Okay.
unique shape that's evergreen, so it's green all year
Is that
round, which is
juniper
pretty.
that's around that one too as well, where the darker
It is.
grass? See,
Yeah.
to me, I think that stone work right there would look beautiful with that landscape and that stone and those type of plants. I mean, I would change mine to that one in a heartbeat, but I just didn't like the ground cover
If it
on
had this piece, Bobby?
No, I'm just saying if we took this stone
Uh-huh.
and took that one out and stuck it right there with all those colors and the way that's laid out, to me, that would look really, really good
But maybe keep that seeded concrete rather than the gravel?
on that side.
They're small.
Are any of those colors year-round? They're not, right?
In the blue palette?
They're
Or the
gonna
red.
evolve. I mean, you're gonna have early spring, summer, that last summer. So you're gonna have some turn back green, others in the fall. So it's an evolving time frame is what we're trying to
But
coordinate.
Can we go through
But
them
do they die
individually and
into-
you tell us which one stays color and which one doesn't, so we can?
I can give a pretty good idea on those. Yeah, I could, I mean, from that. You're gonna get a lot.
Do we want to answer kind of the ground cover material question before we dive into the
I like
flowering
that.
plants?
You're Vanna, I'm not.
No, I'm just trying to kind of answer one question and move it into,
The buffalo grass is not gonna be an evergreen.
No.
You guys make-
But the other, most of the other green ground
Over here?
covers are gonna stay green except
why
the
I like
buffalo
the
grass.
ground covers,
Agreed with you.
Well,
Except which one? Point
The
it.
buffalo grass.
What's buffalo?
this
red?
is blue stem, which turns cinnamon color in the fall to winter.
Okay,
So it's kind of like a dried flower arrangement.
but it'll have some color.
But then it's chopped back in the early spring, and then it comes back, flushes out that blue-green color.
You said cinnamon, like brown, just brown?
Cinnamon color.
Like, it does look,
Tammy, that's the buffalo
Uh,
grass.
That
is
stays
it, I
green.
mean,
No.
It's an egg.
just normal grass.
It's beautiful when it sits together in big.
Buffalo grass
Yeah.
doesn't
like
even,
dormant, it's still pretty?
it's not
Okay.
super
When you said
gorgeous.
brown, I was
It's
like, so does
more
it-
No, it has a wheat color to it.
Okay,
so
okay.
it's
So I'm
not-
hearing more of you say less
Okay.
of the turf grass
Yes.
because in the winter there's no green element to it.
And that's one thing I would bring up also is that it doesn't look like we have any evergreen elements in the planters and stuff, and I'm afraid it's gonna look kind of dead.
That's what I'm concerned about.
The other times of year, I mean, I really like having some of that evergreen on the base, because I think that's.
That'll provide that ability to keep some year-round green.
But do
I'd
we
like to
need a
see
little
some
more?
up in the,
Like a different
on
kind
the
of
top,
evergreen,
too.
like
Within the
Exactly,
planters.
you have some
Okay.
Wait a minute, okay, I'm
Sorry.
totally confused right now. We got a lot of stuff going on here, and,
sorry.
no,
I have a lot of planned opinions, I'm sorry.
No, that's good, because I'm not good at it. That's gorgeous here, but I would like to see like the winter version of that, or that, whichever one. That's my concern, so which ones of them will look good? Can you all tell us that?
Any of these, your Hesperella, which is the red yucca and/or the yellow yucca, which will always keep its foliage.
Okay.
But only the green foliage, right?
Won't keep
I
its
mean,
flowers?
our yuccas
Green
don't bloom.
foliage, but the stems die.
Yeah.
You see them down Central Expressway.
sure.
They're great red swords in the winter, the summer, but they'll be profuse during the whole summer long, and right now they're burning up because it's so blasted hot. But they hold very long, and you plant them in dens. You don't plant them out and far apart. You want to get those to where all the blooms really create that colony.
Right.
And then, again, I agree with the idea. Again, we're not into the finite kind of finesse of the planting design. I hear you, and we're writing these notes down, evergreen. We need something green when it's down. And the same down here. So we're going to make sure that we're going to get that evolving. It doesn't look like something's missing.
Yeah, because if it just all goes away, then you've just got
Empty, empty. We don't want it to be empty.
That's my concern.
Are these gonna be seasonal to where we're replacing them wintertime
No.
plants, or we're just leaving them in for the
They're
whole year?
perennial, right?
Now, when we get to the downtown,
There'll be some seasonal.
we're
color
going to
pops.
bring in a seasonal change annual,
Okay.
where we're going to doll that up at that center arrival of the downtown, so as you get there, that would be a place we'd want to do that.
Okay. That's cool.
Does that make
So I
sense?
think saying you just want
Winter.
ground cover down low, so that way it's always, there's always
It's, I
green.
think, one of
Yeah.
the pieces of direction that we can provide to Mesa to kind of come back and say, okay, we heard you, here's the feedback that we've incorporated. We'll give you, and we'll give you maybe 2 images at, alternating seasonal points.
Great.
But it would be this hardscape with the seeded concrete with some sort of combination of ground cover over, rather than turf.
Yes.
That gives you that seasonal the year-round green that you're looking for. And then I think I heard the majority of you were leaning towards the blue over red color palette, just to give them some direction in terms of what plant mix they choose. And, I think they've heard that we want to make sure there's some interesting color year-round.
Can I also add, and Tammy, I'm not trying to talk over you, I know what you're saying with the yucca, and they are beautiful on Central Expressway. They don't do very well out here.
Point a
places
yucca
that
out,
I've-
point one out for me.
So a yucca would be red and the yellows. I just don't care for them, so they would be very low on my list of things I'd like to see planted.
And I like the juxtaposition between the purple and the yellows
Oh, I
together.
want some yellows, I'm with
Yeah.
you, I agree.
Well, the
Great.
catmint and the black-eyed Susan, but that's not the same as.
Is what's in some of the.
Oh, we weren't,
Well, I'm-
we didn't show everything that's on those lists. That's just what we're saying is available to that palette.
Ideas.
It does very well, it manages well, performs very well.
How well does
So-
the winter creeper work
Oh,
in
great.
winter?
It's awesome.
You'll get a purple
Yeah.
color out of it, actually. It turns burgundy purple.
I like that, I like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Really
and
what
that's,
maintenance.
that's a really strong performer, just in generally, we were working with Stonebridge, and they were going through their entire community, and what they found is the maintenance of what they had to deal with, ultimately, winter creeper is there by far strongest, so
Okay.
good for them, but unfortunately, also for the design, is that they started using it everywhere. But it's because of that, so it is a very strong performer in the urban setting, which this is a corridor, vehicles on both sides, so that's part of what's kind of influenced the planting.
Be it known, now, nature has its way, Mother Nature, these trees will get large. Everything under here will start to evolve to a shade thing, and it will have to be updated to a shade.
Sure.
So areas that are open will remain, so this is an evolving landscape. It is not gonna be static. And maintenance,
Yeah, 5 years
I
from
can
now, we
tell
may be
you
looking
now,
at something
maintenance is
different.
the number one thing to be successful with this project from the day it's in on.
But is that what we want?
Well, all
Or
of
just
it.
general maintenance.
General
just
maintenance.
overall.
Okay, so it's not,
We have to care for
You
it.
have to
Yeah.
care
well,
for
I
it.
understand, but is it
It's a lot.
above anything else that we'd have to take care of?
No.
I mean, this isn't at a whole nother level.
No,
No, I
there's,
think just like anything.
Your other option is just do turf and cut it, and you don't want that. You want
No.
something
No.
spectacular. So you're gonna have to put a lot of time and effort into maintenance, but you'll get the benefit of the beauty out of it.
Exactly.
It's kind of mostly like thoughtful maintenance. Like,
Our
you just
water
have to
requirements
plan
are less
and
here
some cycles to it.
with these drought tolerant pallets. These are very drought tolerant compared to a thirsty ground plane of turf.
Yeah, we don't want that.
And you got irrigation heads that get out of whack, you lose your turf, you're gonna get dead spots,
Yeah.
you get all that kind of thing. So-
You get dead spots anyway, no matter what you do.
Right,
Yeah.
so here we got a lot more, freedom here. These things will pull through.
Right.
And one
So-
good point with that, just real quick, with the maintenance specific to the hardscape, because we're talking a lot about landscape, talking about that stone option versus this stone option, that's a more forgiving option long-term. Things
Okay.
can happen to that, you can have a car hit that, and it doesn't disrupt the character
Chip off
as
a little
much
piece or something.
versus something like this. So
This could
it's
shatter
things
the
that are
veneer.
more precise, such as that veneering, are gonna require more maintenance long-term to maintain that exceptional quality, which was
Great
part
point.
of that.
It becomes extremely expensive.
Exactly.
That more
Initial
represents our
cost,
community anyhow.
There's a
So-
lot of variables with that, yes.
Yeah,
But they will be hit.
This-
Somebody
this
will
one
hit
on
this.
of course.
Yeah, that's inevitable.
So we gotta be texting and driving.
I have a question. Why, are we stuck reds and blues and blues? Can we not intermix
Oh,
those?
everything.
You can start at the one end and go red and evolve to blue and then have that.
Red, white, and blue, why can't we have red and
You
blue?
you can roll it through.
Yeah.
So it's.
That was my thought, is if we stay with everything blue or purple and don't have red anywhere, like you say, we can have a couple of areas that have red, like, and
Here's
then
an idea
switch
also,
or-
George, we could do south to north to Main Street
Yeah,
in red.
well, I like red, so.
The main-
Why can't we do
main-
every other?
and then
Well,
do
red
that.
and then
Because I think,
Let me finish, please.
well, talk fast then.
I can't with you. I'm not with you, with you,
Go.
George. So anyways, I gave it to George, it's his birthday. Well, listen, anyways, the Main Street, and then have it with, it's all this, this, just this
Hoopla.
beautiful, hoopla, and then we turn it into blue going out. I mean, it just characterizes both sides.
I think, I was gonna say, I think that's a great point, because we talked
I like
about having a
every
lot
other
more
myself.
seasonal pops of color. And if you've got kind of one color palette throughout, the bulk of the corridor, but then in your seasonal pop kind of concentrated areas, you accent it with something contrasting, that might give you a little bit of that, hey, it's not all, the kind of
Right.
boring same thing, but some different seasonal
Just
pop.
keep in mind, the automobile is the predominant user or viewer. And so 45 miles an hour or more, it's going to happen a lot quicker. So seconds go by so if you just did every other one, you're going to get a real da-da-da-da, rather than something that's gliding.
Yeah, you
So
want-
distances.
See, that's why we hire them.
So do, like you're saying, do the reds.
Right.
And then maybe do Main Street like it is, and then go out with the blues, maybe.
And that's something we can study.
Concentrated pops.
Kinda like that idea.
But I would, with more detail that even you're desiring on the seasonal time frame and so forth, we can get that in the next round. So you can make a much clearer decision on the species and how they perform through the season. So we'll show a seasonal
Cool.
play.
So I think we've gotten a ton of good feedback on the different elements that we needed. We've got general shape, we've kind of got the ground level covered. We've talked about plant mix, what the expectations are. Mesa's gonna bring that back. They're gonna make some of the tweaks, get rid of the gravel, show some of those, different, winter versus summer looks. Mesa, is there any other specific feedback related to elements in order to bring back a revised kind of final proposal here to the council?
I have one other thing. I love the lavender crepe myrtle and the vitex, if you're looking for tree
Oh, me too.
information as well. I think those just add a different color to a different pop on the outside edges.
I think, I've never seen one. Is there
You've
any
seen them
around
all the
here?
time. They perform
Yeah,
really well.
lavender.
Those Vitex, yeah.
Crepe myrtle is
Oh,
very
yeah, one
hard.
of my yard.
I have one of my own.
Using the
But you
red
don't even know.
Tuscarora,
They do
red
awesome.
myrtle,
They do
and
awesome.
this is possum hall, that's winter time.
I think that's
Say
just
that
more
again.
vibrant.
That's possum hall, and then we have desert.
What about the one on the right?
That's a Tuscarora crepe myrtle.
Does it stay?
It's a pigeon blood red.
It's beautiful.
I love
Looks
that.
beautiful.
So,
Maybe
crepe
put,
myrtles are-
put the
okay.
red creek myrtles with the
They're very hard.
blue
right,
and
so
then put the,
I love this
you're
stuff.
seeing in these schemes, that's on the right-of-ways, that's
Yeah.
showing where those would be. Now, budget is limiting at this stage on the right-of-ways, but that's the full master plan over time,
Yeah.
that where we do that. So we're intersections of at the downtown and at the gateways, that's where we're concentrating the first crepe myrtles. Thereafter, it's a long-term play when those are added.
So the one other piece of data that I can think of that might be helpful for Mesa. You know, we kind of pointed out that when we chose either of these two options that, you know, I think we've kind of honed in on that one at this point, but the medians in which that allowed for kind of the full play of that to occur based on width was not going to be everywhere. So in the medians where we don't have the full space to create this shape, Mesa, do you feel like you've got the feedback you need to kind of keep something that is consistent with this look, but gives us something in those other smaller areas?
It does. I mean, we'll be able to keep some, if the wall undulates down, we'll be able to keep the ribbon of the hardscape.
Okay.
We want to be real careful, again, like I said, deciduous or things that go into dormancy, that we want to make sure that the hardscape comes alive and really holds it. And then hopefully with lighting in the budget, we can actually accent that hardscape and really make it show up as well, besides the tree lights.
So in some of those narrower areas, you'll use some of these ground plane elements or just a piece of the wall to keep something, so it's not a blank space.
Yes,
but-
yeah.
Evergreen's incredible.
Do
The
we,
form and shape and material will.
when we get to the real narrow areas for the turns, will we go with some of these other gravel or lower things? Or will we still try to have a wall? We can't have a wall.
No.
Right, the turn area.
Are you talking about the median nosing areas?
And that's 6 foot wide. We're limited to a ground plane treatment, and that would be those slabs that we.
Given the bottom there.
Right
Yeah, I
here.
expect
That's
your
what I
median
thought,
nosings
yeah.
would transfer into something like
Yeah.
that.
We're gonna say
Or the stone
both of
slabs,
those,
too.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Still some combination.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, the stone slabs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you can get some green in
Well,
there.
I
with
heard
the-
from a number of folks
Oh,
that
yeah, no.
they did not care for
That's
that.
I don't care for that.
So I'm saying your median nosings would transfer into your hardscape.
Maybe those kind of,
Be
yeah.
careful if you do that on your nosing though, because it will be very similar to the stamped brick that you're gonna have right now for free.
So how do we differentiate that? If we want to not do the free stamped brick, how do we have something that looks?
I think
Well, that's
that
the,
would look dramatically
that
better
was
than
why
the
the
red
stone
brick.
slab was suggested to create the
Okay.
texture there.
That's-
Even if it doesn't have vegetation in it, it could just be the stone slab.
But I thought that's what you said would look the same as.
No, Adrian was saying you guys liked this instead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I heard positive feedback about this, I heard not so positive feedback about the
Yeah,
rest.
agreed.
But you could,
So my
you
point
could
is
put
if
the
you-
stone in,
Yes.
What's your
in
point?
concrete.
But I'm sorry,
If
I
you
don't
don't-
understand Jerry's point.
Yeah, go back to Jerry
My
first
point
and
is
hold
that
that, George.
if you do the stone slab design at the noses, you can do it without the grass in between, and so the stones are just fit tighter,
Like a gravel or a sand
but
or
it
something
creates
in between.
texture to it.
Like pavers.
If you go with this, that's more flat,
Yeah.
you might as well have just done the stamped concrete that
Okay,
looks like
that's my
brick,
question,
and just
right.
done it this color
How do
instead of
we
the red.
not- Right,
That's all
how
I'm
do we
saying,
not
it's free.
have that? How
That's
do
a
we
good
not
point,
look like we just
put 'em
replaced
kind of
something
close
that was
together
brick?
like pavers.
I think it's
That would look
important that
nice.
you're trying to keep this communication with this material in those nosings.
You have the example of the
Which
nose,
would-
you don't have it
which
in
would
this, I have it in the packet
Yes, it
here.
would be that. And we can take the,
Actually, I think-
from your packet.
Yeah, Jerry, I think we actually have it on one of the other ones.
Cut and fit tighter together.
Yeah, you
because the
actually had a
detail-
picture of it.
That's what I'm, that's
You're
what
looking
I'm
at one
There you
versus
go.
the other, and like you said, it's about how it's cut and how it fits together that gives it.
You can see,
Yeah.
these are examples.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
That's that
You
around.
can do this, so you don't have the maintenance, you set it in,
Yeah,
Right.
that's that
set it
around.
in concrete.
Pass that baby
Yeah, I
around,
think that
please.
might be.
I'm good with that.
And it gives you more texture than a stamp,
Yes.
because the other
You
blue
think that
applies
looks
just like a
like
stamped
I do.
concrete.
Okay.
And in this case, just stamp a brick and paint it brown.
In between, when I know we already have something.
In that particular case, they have like a gravel, or it could be like some type of cement mix that they sit in, but in
It
that,
could just be crushed granite. I mean,
Yeah,
right?
crushed granite.
it can be.
That's what you figured, I mean,
And that way you can herbicide it if you want to keep the weeds.
I'm good, I'm good.
Okay.
I passed
thought
it.
you looked over
Sorry.
time.
I did the,
You guys usually go for a 2-on-1
Yeah, we
attack
don't-
of
we
the
normally
material,
work against
so-
that,
but that would just be on the nose, so.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know,
on the
I think that
nose,
could
yeah.
be really nice.
Then safety concern.
So just to read, so the difference between the two
No, I know.
is just texture, that's all it is.
Is there anything else, or are those basically our choices? This one and,
Well, that's trying to bring in the stone into
Keeps
the
the
intersection.
stone involved.
That's
Those
what it's
median
about.
nosings are very long in some cases, so we probably wouldn't do the slabs the whole way.
Be too much.
You would probably incorporate other things like the winter creeper or the juniper throughout, but that would be it.
I would
Okay.
prefer, I don't know how
Because
everyone else
this to
feels,
me-
I
Because
prefer
that's,
more of
the
that.
thing is, if you drive over, like if a semi-truck drives over that, that's the other reason is that would provide
Yes.
some form of stability and would be less likely to get smashed or ruin the
Yeah.
plant material.
That's why
They're gonna
having-
get run over a lot.
But some of these long
They are
ones will
gonna
mix in
run
plant
over.
material.
Yes.
You can run landscape,
Well,
but
nosing
like
that-
Joe's
Outpost,
saying that
yeah.
as you move to the end where the semis will turn and they'll go jump over it, You're gonna need something that's gonna take the beating.
So I
Not
like,
taking
I
out
like putting the
sprinkler
stone
heads.
there,
Right, yeah.
mounting it in something.
So the idea is to take that
Having
concept,
Not a clear delineation, but some
Say that one more time, Jerry.
delineation and then the winter creepers or something like that.
Exactly.
Granite
I think that would look very nice.
street
Okay.
at the end.
I wanna make sure we're all still in the same conversation, we're not.
yes.
Solid,
Yeah,
right?
I apologize, just to
Yeah, go
conclude the
ahead.
thought. The idea is that you do something like this
In the dark.
for two reasons. One, it provides for the vehicles that may drive over it, so it's got a stable base. But two, it continues your theme of the stone all the way to the intersection, instead of going to a more fake, concrete, textured concrete look, which is what every intersection knows looks like.
Right.
And so, that's why if you're gonna do that textured concrete like you have here, then you might as well just stamp it and stain it,
Right.
you know, and then leave it.
Whatever color
So
you
even if
Instead
you
of
do
red.
that, at the nosings without the grass in between, it's still appropriate to have that seeded concrete through here.
Yes,
but
yes,
it-
no,
but
yeah,
it's
it's
Giving
very-
that pop of some
Yes.
different stone at the nosings.
But
just gives
here it's
that-
got contrast, if you do that at the intersection, the only contrast is the curb.
Right.
And so you lose, it just blends in, whereas here it's different, there's a contrast there.
And that's part of being distinguished, you know, how we distinguish
Sure.
ourselves against the adjacent corridors and corridors around, you know, so that's part of it.
Okay, so we're gonna allow 60 seconds of public input. Okay, so Ms. Hennessy, you said you had something you wanted to tell us real quick?
I passed this around to some of the neighbors that I could get a hold of, and the one thing that I got from, pretty well everybody was, they thought that this was an enormous safety hazard, because right at Church and, Riverwalk now, several of them, and I too have gone left at night and thought I was on that side of the road and you're on this side of the road. And you really need something really to jump out, even at night, you know, height-wise,
Or
as
at
much
least
as
with lighting.
possible, so that you think, so you realize that you have to go further, some way of signaling that this, they can't go that way.
Which side of the road they need to be on?
Yeah, and that can be done with shrubbery, anything, but that's what everybody was concerned about.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you.
point.
I like that.
So in your all's travels doing this for however long you've done it, do you see any other ways to incorporate what she's saying in it? Because I see what she's saying at night, people might not even see that and just go right over it.
Well, that
go
might be
wrong side.
more for the stoplight areas, but just where people turn left, I think that other option would be okay, don't you think?
We will,
Does that make
we can do
Talking
that,
about
and we can
outside
like, really announce that and
Just
punctuate
through the
that,
middle.
and where it's visible. But we also are very restricted at the nosings because of visibility. They can only be no more than 30 inches.
I think one of the
do
things.
something
For lighting or
You
something?
were saying,
Lighting?
especially
something
with
lighting
lighting,
and
you might be
so-
able to.
Okay, maybe
Lighting
lights.
might be used,
Just so people
if you had
aren't
some
driving
sort of
right over
lighting.
it.
So, can I ask one more question?
No,
On
you're-
the
you're out of
nosing,
questions.
on the nosing.
No, you're done.
That's you. On the nosings, there's really only two options, basically, is what you're saying. The old stamped concrete like everybody has, or doing something like
Stone.
this. Is there anything else that you
As
all?
in the length of the narrow 6 foot, which we include the nosing to that, you could actually have green, ground cover, a juniper or anything. And then that way it's not just hardscape all the way 6 lanes across, plus all that being hardscape. So green is good in 6 feet. At 6 feet still pretty, you know,
This
wider
is
than
taller
this
than
table.
me.
Sure.
So you still can add some green, but as you get closer to the end where the tractor trailers and things would actually start turning and cutting it short, we want to armor that so they don't cross that out.
Make sure that's.
And you're
hardscape.
exactly right, because on Riverwalk, I live right over there also, and the trailer trucks turn in to go to Market Street,
cut over.
and they just beat the snot out of that. Matter of fact, we put a big stone out there, and they still clip that big dude
Yep.
all the time, so.
He needs
Jerry's
lessons.
right, you know, with that.
But I think
You
it's
gotta be
important
conducive for those guys as well.
Hardscape there at the very end.
that from hearing the comment of it's being visible, we'll make sure that there's enough contrast in that. And of course, lighting and things will help with that as well.
I think some
And
lighting
one thing
there.
we may have not focused on is with those stones that we were looking at, they're about 14 inches thick. So you can actually set them up within the, you know,
various
grade.
heights.
Oh,
where
that'd
you-
be beautiful.
You can create a shadow, so if you're at night, you would have, you know, the lights, you'd have some of that shadowing you pick up.
Sounds nice.
If you contrast it, which we were looking at at one point as part of the detail, you know, so to speak.
There's an image here, we spent a lot of time out at the quarries. This is material out of the quarry that they can't get back to their second quarry, and they built a road out of this 14-inch thick. This is throwaway stone, 14-inch thick. They built a road so they get the semis to load up and bring the material out. I was like, well, that's interesting, so that's.
Tell them we're just helping them out by hauling it off.
That's right,
That's
we'll
what-
take your spare.
That's
Yeah.
considered, considered trash stone.
This is just junk. Yeah,
So that's where we got the idea of actually
We'll help with
incorporating
that.
these in here, because we know that
I
it's
love that idea.
very.
Yeah.
That's a good substantial.
I like that, but we don't want it to look like.
substantial.
Close together, so you're
Now,
not seeing
we
things
can
in
play
between.
with the spacing in those, but, you know, as they need it, they fill this with like a road base after that. And so it's like very stable.
Yeah.
Even after a rain, they can get all the way back there.
Could we do any of those little green, what are those little ones they always put between stones? A
Are you
little-
talking about Mexican beach pebble?
No, it's a plant.
Oh.
Little-
Mondo
They
grass?
look like
Mondo
spider
grass,
plants, but they're
that's-
little
yeah.
tiny ones.
It's Mondo or.
How do those things hold up? I guess if a truck ran over them,
They'll-
they would
Going back
as
to
well.
that,
They-
like
They
the
will do
juniper.
well, and they also be very hot, the stone, they probably scorch those. They like a little bit more shade.
Oh, okay.
And I think our input from the back over here, the people who have to take care of it, is putting stuff between those stones.
Well, that's what I was
It's a
saying, I'd like
maintenance-
to,
maintenance
I'd like to
nightmare.
see them closer together.
That's why you're here,
Yeah.
Lisa, speak up. Speak up.
I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Do you have something that you want to say to
Please
give us
do.
information?
That's your.
All this looks beautiful, so we'll do whatever you guys want.
I think I saw her get a little excited when you guys said more ground cover and less turf.
Oh, she got excited then?
Definitely what we want.
Okay, well, Mesa, can you guys think of any other feedback that we need from the council in order to really translate all of this into an updated corridor design plan?
I think
I
we've
think
got
we've
a
got
lot of
some
good,
really good
honestly, we've got a
feedback
lot of great
Great
input.
feedback.
Y'all came very close to our selection as we, in the company, the
Sounds good.
office. We brought the whole office in, we're an office about 30 people, and so we bring them in and didn't say anything, said pick your best, so.
Yeah, they did a mock dot exhibit.
What did
Yeah.
you choose? What did y'all choose?
The one that you have there was number 2, I believe,
Okay.
David.
Which one? This one over here to the left?
And
Yeah,
then
that
number 1 was the undulation of the ribbon wall, but not necessarily the
not
way
the
the
landscape.
landscape. They just liked.
I agree, that wall is beautiful.
Everybody kind of went with this as the undulating wall, which honestly, the planners.
It's
do.
incorporated.
That basically is.
And
Right, so
there
Only
may be
with the
areas where
planter,
we can't
right?
do a
Right,
planner.
right. I think we all came
So
to
we
the
Your
could
same.
do that
office
in some
could
areas.
have
That's a
vision
that's a great
to
point.
not see the desert plants there.
Right, exactly.
We could do that in some other areas.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there are some areas where we may not be able to do a planner for one reason or another.
Exactly.
And we could take that same undulating theme
I
that the
love
planner
that.
has and
continue the
incorporate it into a
ribbon
wall, but with a planting scheme that's
With a planting scheme that's more vibrant.
Sure.
And that's the big thing, because as we see this corridor, and we have to constantly look at it as this and remind ourselves, this is 3 miles, what is gonna be appropriate? And understanding, again, going back into where we actually have a wide median, most of the corridor is not the wide median. So doing something like that to where you have that ability to really dive down, feather into, not with the landscape in between it, but you can really weave that to where it can be very powerful, compelling, and distinctly Colleyville specifically, you know, along this corridor.
Excellent.
Good, we think it's gonna look unique.
So knowing what you guys know, are we heading to something very unique, do you feel?
Oh, yeah.
Colleyville?
There's not
Yes,
another
absolutely.
municipality or in the region that we know of that's done this.
Well, what you guys did made it so easy
I know.
to really get a better
really helped.
feel for what this is gonna be like, so it was
Yes,
so
Yep.
helpful,
Well,
thank
you've
you.
allowed us
we
to do
appreciate
that,
the
so
input.
y'all
Yeah.
been on the course with us along the way. We
That's
really
been
appreciate
great.
it.
I mean,
The input's
can you
been
imagine
great.
the amount of feedback that we just accomplished in an hour? I mean,
Wow.
that's pretty
That's
impressive.
amazing.
We were here really late,
This
yeah.
to begin with.
We'll run
No.
meetings.
Yeah, we'll
All right,
Richard,
Mayor.
because he wasn't
Not
here.
good.
I'm assuming this is a rough draft, but there is no Turrent lane, it's Tarrant lane, but that's okay.
George.
Spell check.
Minor technical.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Minor detail.
No, I'm glad. We like people to pick up on it.
so I imagine that in the coming weeks, they'll, take all this feedback back, work on an updated design. Maybe sometime, a couple weeks down the road, we'll have some additional information to share. At least maybe, 2 boards or PDFs that show the meeting itself with those updates and the different seasons. It may take them a little bit longer to translate through the entire corridor what the design is,
yes.
but we can probably on a quicker
Okay.
time frame turn around at least those 2 sets of images.
Yeah, and showing it more holistically through the
Exactly.
corridor.
You'll have this done by spring, right?
Oh,
Spring of what year?
Yes, exactly.
It'll be done by spring, absolutely.
We're not gonna be
We're gonna
touched
get it.
first.
Spring of 22.
You've been sent.
Adrian, the other thing is when you come back, can you please also have then how that extends out, both in the identified areas where you think it's most important to do the parkway trees or parkway color?
Sure.
And secondarily, where the hardscape is now going to be represented in the retaining walls and vertical elements that you have outside the medians.
Yeah, I think really that next step, once this translates in the corridor, to Jerry's point, is, okay, now that we understand where we're going here, does that change our thought process on any of those proposed vertical elements?
And
And,
some of the simple elements like glade,
right,
how does it change that wall design? You know, we were always talking text, like, give us a blank wall, we'll put the stone on it. How does that, how does that change that look?
Sure.
And, you know, how does it translate the ripple effect outward now?
sure,
Yes.
absolutely.
What's the difference between these two, the red and the blue? I see more red
Yeah,
highlighted on the
so,
medians here.
so the blue,
On your
as
keys,
we
right?
talked about, no, you're good. As far as the blue goes, that's where we do not have a height restriction whatsoever because of the adjacent turn lanes, curb cuts. All these other zones are affected by that height restriction, which is a visibility triangle, such as if I'm, a good example of it would be, say, an unsignalized cross where I can go across. I need to be able to see in both directions a certain distance due to the speed. So that's basically, this is where we can put as tall as we want in the blue.
These are the same roads, so how come over there?
Mhm.
You have more
More
reds
medians.
than you have anything here.
Right.
Right, so this was intended to highlight the medians that are wide, so we can see wide versus less, versus something that's gonna be 6 feet. The big point with that was, what we're showing here basically constitutes an example of the wider median. But what we're trying to point out is, so we can all see, is that most of the corridor is not actually the wider median.
Right.
It's gonna be the narrower median, so just as a context.
You can exceed 30 inches in these
You-
that are dark red.
Yes.
These we have to maintain 30, no
30
more than
inches or
30
less.
inches.
Mhm.
So the dark red are the areas that are the bigger medians, correct?
What we're actually showing you guys, it's yes, but also height.
Height.
Because we can, say for instance, this particular option, that can happen here, and it can happen here, so that can actually apply to all of these.
good.
But in the blue, we could actually exaggerate the height on that up to 3-4 feet potentially in some of those areas. We're not saying we want to do that.
Not necessarily.
That's just what we're trying to communicate, because
Okay.
part of the whole conversation
Okay,
is,
that's what I was-
That makes
what I
sense.
was
Yeah.
So
wondering
it could
is
be a
what was
little
the
bit
difference
So,
between blue and
but
red?
I think the only context that makes sense is if for some reason you wanted a plant material in the middle of that planter
Exactly.
that maybe was a hedge line that stayed green all year round, you would have height restrictions in some of the spots, you would not have them in these select spaces.
height
Or if
restriction
you had
applies to
chosen
the
one of the
plants
other
in the
designs that
planters.
had a higher wall, we would have needed to be more mindful of those.
So as these set, this will work through the whole corridor.
yes.
So how
Okay.
many of those are there? Have you counted how many of these that
It's
we can put
interesting,
in?
there's a percentage of what is,
Now, how many, she's saying, how many
Right.
planting areas do you have in the corridor that you
Right.
could put those in?
That you can put that in.
the actual planter.
Yes.
Yes. Is it the,
There too.
Are these darker?
And we said it was like 30%.
30, there's 30% of what
Yeah,
is
as a
actually
percentage, we looked at
planter.
it as a percentage, it's about 30%.
And it's,
But,
So
It's
like
congregated-
25 planters.
it's more to the northern
25,
end.
that many?
Roughly, I'm just.
That's nice.
The big ones
They're,
like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
roughly.
Wow.
But they will be, yes, but they will be lower because the
Right.
height restriction also
Doesn't
applies to
matter,
the
they're
plant material.
lower.
You're still gonna get planter.
and part of what we're also evaluating, because this is where the design happens really, is we take
We can go
this
way higher.
concept,
Yes.
and where we have a median that is not this long, but is only that long, which you were just pointing to, we would interpret this option, it's probably likely gonna be a little lower, a little narrower. That way it fits the context of its environment, but still fits in the overall fabric of what the ribbon option would be. So that's where we're gonna take.
You're not gonna notice that, you're gonna see the theme throughout. It may be
Yes.
a little lower, a little bit
No
smaller.
one else will know.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah, so I
exactly.
mean, that's where Mesa can put their design hats on
Exactly.
and
It's-
translate
we-
this into something that
Right,
works
we
for
will
those.
design it to be a cohesive, holistic design based off of the feedback that we have here.
So be it known too, through this process, we have been checking our numbers for cost. And we've also doing meetings with a number of contractors, maintenance contractors. And we're seeing what we're up against on annual play. So just be it known, the design process, we can't just show you things that we don't know that you can handle, so that's been going on all along the way.
Great.
And we'll get into that more detail, that, how that plays, but it's important because what you're getting ready to commit to.
So what you're saying is, you're taking into consideration what it's gonna cost us on an annual basis to upkeep it too.
Maintenance and initial.
That's great.
And initial.
You're gonna
Where
have
you,
full
where
on
you have a more flexible option,
contractors in.
where we can take the stone and it doesn't
Wonderful.
take a lot of refinement.
Maintain.
We can
Yeah,
not
exactly.
only
A lot of
cover
people get
what would
left
be
with
long-term maintenance
something like that.
aesthetically, which
That's
reduces the
another
need to constantly maintain.
Yep.
We also save on being able to get some of that big stone that they say they're just gonna use as spoils. We could take that, repurpose it into something very unique. It's still a stone, it's still gonna hold up. So we're kinda getting the front end cost, but also it's a flexible design because it's not perfect in its nature,
Okay.
which allows that maintenance to be a little bit more flexible versus having something that's perfectly polished, perfectly clean.
That makes sense.
So when you're viewing it like that, that's why that's why we tend to go to things like that, because when we're viewing the whole picture in terms of how the city's gonna live throughout its
Long-term.
lifetime, long-term,
Yeah.
we wanna make sure, well, if maintenance dipped or something like that, it's a flexible design to where it always looks good versus
Yeah.
something you may have nearby that may have, it has so much going on, you can quickly tell when something's out of line, therefore everybody has an issue with it.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you guys, this has been fantastic.
Great feedback. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Okay, so we're wrapping up, and what we'll do is we're gonna send an email to the mayor, just telling him that we approve the ground plane, no gravel picture, and send it to him. He'll be really ecstatic. Yeah, he's gonna go,
You're
what?
gonna get me in trouble.
Yeah, so really, truly.
This is not coming from you.
We heard the comments.
We just wanna make sure he's paying
But,
attention.
I wanna thank everybody that's
I
been
agree.
watching online with us. We see you guys on there, and also Miss Hennessy, and,
Miss Rogers.
Miss Rogers. And, we appreciate you guys coming and taking your time here, so everybody, great job. So, meeting is adjourned,
Boom.
or workshop.
Yeah, tell them it's gonna be mostly pamper scraps.
Very good.
No, it's been fun.
Tomorrow, put these on the website.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.